Live from Washington, D.C., it's the Paydirt Football Show.
Are you trying to give me the double talk?
You talk too much.
And now, sit back and listen to 2 hours of biased, brainless blithering sure to drop your sports IQ by at least 20 points.
7 years of college down the drain.
Paydirt is on the air.
All right, welcome everyone to the PAFL/PSAFL radio show here, or YouTube show. Action PC Football Leagues here at PaydirtFootball.com. We're moving close to the end of one season, PAFL, and moving into the beginning of the PSAFL. So lots is happening right now. So what we're going to do is turn this over to Calvin to start talking about things, and I'll try to follow him here with the visuals.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, for some reason I can't see the screen, but maybe I needed to reboot my PC, but we'll make this work anyway.
Yeah, I'll just try to make sure I'm putting up what you're talking about.
And we have Joe with us too. We're going to focus on the PSAFL, and if we have some time at the end, we might talk PAFL. So we will dive right into the rules. So the whole point of this show is kind of talk people through the flow here. PSAFL, it's going to be different than the first 2 years, so just want to talk it through, and hopefully this helps. And if you go to our rules, I tried to lay them out sequential, meaning like at the end of, you're starting a season, what happens sequentially from that point forward. So the first thing that y'all all know, our salary cap's $120 million. And once we release the first disc, like we did for this season, you're allowed to keep every player that's on your team, whether you have 30 or whether you have 70. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters, though, is if your number of players, if they exceed our salary cap, if they exceed 120 million, then you must drop players immediately, even before the rookie draft. This year, we had nobody in that category. We had a few people close, but nobody over 120 million. Next part, which we've just finished, is the rookie draft, and it's 7 rounds, and we're drafting from the prior year's rookie draft, players that were drafted. And it didn't matter if they're included in the game or not. You can draft uncarded players, and we'll get to that in a minute. And so we went through the rookie draft. We just finished that. And at that point, now we check your team salary again for 120 million. And if you're over, you have to release players. You cannot trade your way under cap like other leagues do. If you've been in the PAFL, you know why we do this. We try to make the league more competitive. So it's different, but y'all have all appeared to adjusted pretty well to this rule. So at the end of the rookie draft, that's what we're doing right now. Everybody is cutting down below 120 million, and they're also verifying that their rosters are accurate. And once you do those two things, then trading opens up. And we've got maybe 7 or 8 teams that have verified their rosters. We have maybe close to 10 trades already on the website. And you just go to the PSAFL website, ribbon at the top where it has rules, finalized trade is there. You submit your trade there, your partner confirms, and then I will approve it or not. When I say not, it has to be very lopsided. We shouldn't have any problem with that. So once the trade is approved, it's locked, and we have a record of it forever. That brings us down now to taxi squad. Every team can have up to 2 players on their taxi squad. To be eligible, you've got to play less than or 5 or less games in the actual NFL season. Once you put them on that taxi squad, you cannot use them all year. You cannot trade them. You cannot cut them. You cannot do anything. But their salary is 0, and they are inactive for the whole season. And sometimes we fight with the game because the game likes to make them active, but we try to keep them inactive if at all possible. And that's kind of on you to check it as well. We are working our way here towards free agent bidding. And one thing about your taxi squad, you cannot name a player to the taxi squad once bidding starts. You can name them before bidding starts. You can name them after bidding starts, but not before. And the other little wrinkle with the taxi squad is you cannot bid, say, $20 million on a player that only played 2 games and then say, oh, I'm going to taxi him and have their salary go to 0. That's not allowed either. So,
real quick, would you repeat that? When can you and when can you not name your taxi squad?
Okay, so you can name your taxi squad today all the way up until we start free agent bidding. But during free agent bidding, you cannot put players on taxi squad because that will mess up your total team salary available.
Gotcha.
That's why we don't do it.
Yep.
And then the second wrinkle is we don't want somebody to bid 20 million on a player and then put them on the taxi squad at 0. And then in theory, they could bid another 20 million on another player. So anybody that you bid on and successfully sign, you cannot put on the taxi squad. So those are the wrinkles on the taxi squad. Now, what's really new for us is going to be free agent bidding, but I think this is going to be pretty cool because it's going to help the weaker teams more than the stronger teams. So the first point is, say, I'll give you a date. Say around May 1, we're going to start free agent bidding. We got to wait for the new disc to come out. And then I've got to model the league with all of the players from the official disc. And I know some people are concerned, what happens if salaries change from the disc we're working with, preliminary to the final? Hopefully they don't change much, but if they do change enough to kick you over the salary cap, you'll have to cut some more players. Now, is that likely? I don't think so, but
it could. I mean, you could have 1 player or 2 players on your team jack up their salaries a little bit, and if you're close, it could make a difference. But it's not our fault. But we do have to abide by the rules.
No, and it was good that we had this disc that we could start early. Otherwise, we'd be sitting here doing nothing until about May 1st just to do the rookie draft and everything else. So It was good. I think it was good that we went ahead and used this disc that we got from Pat Crew, to call him out from another league. And that sped us up. That let us have a couple weeks of trading, do a free agent, do the rookie draft, and start this league about a month earlier than we would have without it. So again, to start free agent bidding, I'll say arbitrarily, it's going to be about May 1st, but you'll have a lockdown date where we're going to say, this is it. Everybody's rosters is frozen. And then that'll give me a day or two to upload all of the free agents. And we're going to do these in blocks, several hundred at a time. But if you're going to participate in free agent bidding, obviously you got to have cap space. So you got to be below 120 million. And you got to have roster space. So you got to have less than 52 active players.
So when is our deadline to drop players?
It's kind of fuzzy depending on the disc. But say that the disc actually comes out on the 27th. It would be something like April 30th,
okay,
May 1st. I'm going to give people a couple of days to see what happens with the disc. Okay. As long as nobody's salary goes out of whack, they could probably make the decision pretty quickly in a day or two. And of course, if there's nothing, that changes. So you got to have space. If you got 52 active players, you can't participate in free agent bidding. You've got no place to put them. The next thing to think about in free agent bidding is when you're thinking about cap space, you gotta have enough cap space to fill out your roster fully. So the minimum salary is $350K. Meaning, if you have 10 roster spots open and you only have $1 million, that doesn't work because you can't even fill 3 players with $1 million of cap space.
Yeah, not to mention you have to fill your position minimums.
Yes, and we're going to get to that. So if you have 10 open positions, you better have $3.5 million to fill those 10 positions. And once free agency starts, you can never go above 52 active players from that point on to the rest of the regular season. That's it. And of course, you can never exceed 2 players on your taxi squad. And hopefully by the end of free agency, you should have your roster filled out, 52 active players. I don't really want to fill your roster out for you. So just make sure you get them filled correctly. And now this will be the wrinkle. This will be new. Any free agents that you signed, you cannot trade. You cannot trade until after the Super Bowl. Think of it as a real life. If a team just signed player X, Aaron Rodgers, free agent for 2 years, they're not going to dump him and flip him a month later. So we try to do the same thing in both Paydirt leagues. When you sign a player during free agency, you cannot trade him. And what we do is if you open and look at a player, you will see in his nickname field, there'll be FAS, which means free agent signed under his name. So you can tell that that player is not eligible to be traded. So that could be a big one. That's very unique. If you're not in the PAFL, you've probably never heard of a thing. But we try to do things a little bit differently here to try to better emulate real life.
So FAS means, the S means sad. If you're going to want to try to trade that player, you cannot trade an FAS player.
Yeah, but that is supposed to be a big S for free agent signed. But you're right, you'll be sad once your trade is rejected, because that stuff is verified. So bear that in mind. Again, that's only going to be new to maybe about half of our league. Doesn't play in the PAFL.
Oh, it hurt me last year in the PAFL. I was needing to do things, and I had a bunch of these FAS players that were just stuck right there on my team.
Yes.
I couldn't do anything with them.
Yeah,
So I mean, you got to concern yourself with that, because let's say you get a bunch of injuries, and these guys they're there on your team forever. You can't drop them to sign someone else. So be careful about how many of those you have.
Yeah, so what Len's talking about, he's got a solid team, got a lot of good players, but he maybe had a dozen 350K cheapies because that's all he could afford to fill out his roster. But what that did is that handcuffed him come trading time or try to pick up a player due to injury. He had like studs at the top and duds at the bottom. So that's why he was sad, because he had a hard time doing
Like the real
anything.
Cowboys, yes.
That's right. So keep that in mind. If you get two of I'll call it a schizoid team where you got superstars and 350K, better hope your superstars get you through the year, because you are stuck. You cannot cut or trade or drop any free agents that you sign.
Mine always get me to around week 13 or 14, and then the wheels fall off that cart.
All righty. Then the last thing before the Calvin monologue will be over, I'll bring Joe in more, is our position requirements. They're different. They're different than we had last year. I think these are better. These are, again, more in line. These are pretty identical to the PAFL. So we've got a track record with this working and trying to make sure that teams don't hoard quarterbacks. Just as an aside, the rules last year in the PSAFL let you hold 2 quarterbacks with more than 300 attempts. Well, if you did some math on that, there was only about 25 quarterbacks like that. And if you let teams hold 2 of them, you will quickly be held hostage. So that rule had to go. So if you look at quarterbacks, you have to have a minimum of 340 attempts, but no more than 800. So the no more than 800 is key. There's a couple teams out there that are over this right now, but it's just something you should be aware of. You cannot exceed 800 attempts. And we might as well go to the bottom down a little bit here, because there's a line that says that you have to be in compliance, meaning you've got to be below the maximum passes, the maximum rushes, and the maximum receptions by the start of free agency. So once again, that 427 date, once we hit that 427 date, if your team is exceeding 800 attempts at quarterbacks, you have got to drop one. So on running backs, Number 2, running backs. You have to be under 540 rushes just from running backs, not your whole team, just from running backs. You've got to be under 540 by the start of free agency, or once again, you will have to drop somebody. Las Vegas is an example in the PSAFL. They had like 3 stud running backs. They had Jacobs, Najee Harris, and Mostert. But they ended up trading Najee Harris and Mostert, so he got below the maximum amount. And it's a good thing that Butch did, because he was way over 540 rushes. And the last one, which is the easiest one, you just got to be under 640 receptions for your wide receivers, tight ends, stuff. That's typically not a problem. So just watch your total number of rushes. You can't exceed the maximums, and can't exceed any of these maximums by the start of free agency. Know who you're trading with. You know, if you're trading with somebody, I mean, you got to bear in mind they cannot keep more than 800 attempts passing or 540 rushes. And again, that's all effective once we say it's locked down for free agency. And with that, I think I've covered most everything. I don't know, Joe, if you think I need to expand on something, or...
Only thing I would elaborate on is that in practicality, this, and the only problem I've seen so far in the summer league is that our times are very much condensed compared to what they are in the PAFL. So if you've been in the PAFL for a while, you have an entire summer to get yourself prepared for a free agent draft. You don't have that amount of time in this league. And so I would highly recommend that if you are, just because of like what Len was talking about, where you can't trade the free agents that you sign, this is where it may behoove you to look into possibly trading for some of that depth for teams that are cutting. Yes, and what that is you would take the playoff teams, that gives them an incentive to maybe expend some draft picks that are going to benefit the weaker teams, because ultimately, if you want to make any moves before the trade deadline, you're not going to be able, or if you need to take care of guys that get hurt, you can't make moves if you've got a bunch of free agent signees. So, I would sit there and it's like, in this very short, limited amount of time before the free agent draft, you may want to sit there and you may want to scan, first off, if you're well under the salary cap, you may want to wait to cut, right until the last minute, because you might have a market for your players. That would be one thing I would suggest.
Yeah, and sometimes you might want to keep an extra scrub player or two, not one that you normally wouldn't keep, but the only reason you keep them is just in this scenario again. You need to pick up somebody, and then that you don't have to think much. Well, I can drop this guy, he stinks anyway. The only reason I kept him was because if I got injured and needed to sign an in-season free agent, I don't have to pull my hair out and trade somebody that I don't want to trade or get stuck. Like Len practically got stuck. I was surprised Len had like one guy, and we looked at like a bunch of his, and that was it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he would have had nothing.
Yeah, and I needed to make some trades, and those guys were good to make the trades, and actually other people were interested in some of them, but I was stuck with them. I couldn't trade them to make the depth that I needed for this team, and it's for the PAFL Cowboys team, and it really showed up in the second half of that season when these players started getting injured, and I was putting in backups.
Yes.
But also, I got to say one thing is that this the Strat Draft software was remarkable in terms of getting us through. When you consider the fact that when we were first talking about doing this, we were talking about having this free agent draft at the end of May, and we were going to start the rookie draft at the beginning of May, and with only a week difference between the two. Now we may end up having the free agency draft sometime at the beginning of the month. But I mean, there's going to be time after that draft where we can actually sit there and get rosters ready to go for the season. And a good portion of that was due to Strike Draft. Those guys who learned how to set up their queues and stuff like that was very helpful. I mean, it did allow, but then again, there were some teams that for some reason didn't want to go ahead and set those queues, and their time slot went, and then all of a sudden you see 3 picks go right away. So, future reference, set up your queues if you can. So
Yeah, exactly.
Because your other point about this, everything does happen fast here. We'll have maybe 2 weeks to trade before free agency. You might have another week or so to trade after free agency. But then, there's like a push from some to start this season by June 1. So that's kind of what we're pushing for here. So you just have to go. I mean, you have to go fast. There's not a ton of time to sit back and think for 2 or 3 months about what you want to do and trade your way and do what you want to do. We've been trading pretty quickly here.
Yeah.
So that's about all I got on the PSAFL. I don't know if anybody has anything else.
I don't know, Joe. Do you want to discuss who did well in the draft or anything like that? Are you prepared for anything like that?
Of course, obviously, I think I did well.
Yeah.
But I have yet to hear anybody ever come out of a rookie draft thinking that they did bad. So Don, I would say again, Don prepared ahead of time and stuff like that. He had a lot of picks, and he may take it a little bit on the chin this season. And they're in Slack, we've kind of had a running joke about gentlemen's agreements or GAs, and Don he put up a list of all the gentlemen's agreements that he had prior to this draft, and the challenge is going to be, of course, obviously, is doing these in the right order. For Don, it won't be a problem. For the other teams that he's dealing with, they may have to sit there and wait to sit there and post some. After you've managed to ditch some salary in this one trade, so you can take on some salary in the next. I've had to do that just as easily. So
I thought it was a bit of a weak draft for the rookies.
For the rookie, I think what it is I think there was as far as the very top end. I mean, I'll put it this way: I think that the top end talent in this draft is going to be better than in the draft we've got coming up in the NFL. I think the NFL is not going to have near the star power that this past draft had.
Wow.
But I think it's going to have a lot of depth. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of depth at corner, for instance, but there's no Sauce Gardners.
Yeah.
There's a B. John Robinson that's going to be coming out, but I don't necessarily know that you're going to have all of the running backs that you had in this past draft. And but the one benefit that we do have on this is that we do have a whole entire seasons where the stats and of looking at these guys in the fall, in the spring league, we only have about a month to see them.
Right.
So
you have much more tape here to look at. It's hard to say. I think my draft is kind of, I don't know. It's okay. I could have drafted Brock Purdy, but I didn't. I don't know if that was a mistake or not.
I was looking at him because I've got Dak Prescott, who was injured for 4 or 5 games and still managed to lead the league in interceptions.
Well, it's only because Jameis didn't play.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I never even mentioned it to Calvin, but yeah, in the 7th round of this draft, I had Zylan McCollum just circled. I was like, okay, he's going to be my next guy to pick in the 7th round, and dang if he didn't grab him, before I got him before I got to,
Yeah, there's nothing worse than seeing the guy that drafts just before you take the player you wanted.
Yeah, but in this case, what Joe doesn't know, I was at work and we were having a leisurely lunch and I missed my time.
Ooh.
McCollum wasn't even on my list. McCollum was way at the bottom, and I would have got a different guy. I forget, a defensive tackle on Denver. Somebody, I came back. I was skipped by 3 or 4 picks. So I had kind of read a little bit about McCollum. I'm like, I guess he'll work. I mean, it's 7th round.
Well,
It's not that,
the big thing was
that exciting.
that monster at cornerback, Sauce. What's his name?
Sauce Gardner.
Wow. There was no way I was going to get him, but I looked at him and I was thinking, God, I wonder if I could trade something to get that guy.
No, you couldn't.
No.
But that's okay, because I already had him. I
Yeah.
already made the trade for that. No, I'm a big believer in well, I mean, Calvin's got him in the PAFL.
Yeah.
But he'll have. But I mean, yeah, shutdown corners are nice. So,
Yes, they are. We've got 10 minutes, so let's get on the ball here before the time runs out.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I thought Philly with Purdy was a good pick. Purdy's is a little bit of a risk, but again, I could have taken him, but I had a gentleman's agreement to get David Carr, so didn't really need him. See if Carr works out or not.
and kudos too, like the Rams, even though they picked last in every round, it seemed like every round they grabbed somebody who was of good value. I think Pierce had a really good draft.
I mean, yeah, well, come on, the Rams get Stingley at the end of round 1. And then they got Green. Is that the right name?
Kenyon,
the guard?
Kenyon Green.
They got Kenyon Green at the end of round 2. So he picks dead last. You can do a lot worse than Stingley and Green. I mean, those are top prospects, regardless of their kind of marginal play. I think Joe told me Green played better second half of the year.
Yeah, I mean, and plus also, I mean, both those guys, they played for the Houston Texans, and to be honest with you, anything that Lovie Smith put his fingers on, I'd give a second chance to. So that's my prejudice sticking out against Lovie Smith. But
now Lovie, Lovie Smith.
So I could tell you, Joe, you took my guy. I was looking at Kohler. I think you picked Kohler before I did in round 7. He was the guy I wanted. He was number 1 on my list. But who knows? It's round 7.
Yeah, it's not exactly. I mean, if they're starting for you, you're probably not doing too good. So, yeah. But at least, like I said, and now, I mean, I think the free agency draft is going to be some slim pickings. I think there's going to be a whole lot of money going for Travis Etienne and then a whole bunch of seconds. So.
Yep.
Oh, there's some good guys though. You got Hainsey.
Now there's a few.
Guard.
I should be able to fill a gap or two. But
yeah, I mean, there's enough. I think I counted 5 or 6 guys that were 6s or higher.
Yeah.
Hainsey, I think, is a nice player. Kador.
Well, the problem with Hainsey's going to be is the fact he's going to go back to the bench, and he's going to be trying to compete for a guard job because Ryan Jensen's back. So, I mean, now eventually he probably will be the starting center for the Bucs, but this next year he's probably competing for a guard. I don't know if he's got the chops to play guard.
The Bucs are rebuilding anyway, so I guess I don't know.
But like I said,
who Len got here. So Len got Anderson, Troy Anderson.
yeah, I didn't have a good draft. I was forced to go with a cornerback before I wanted to with Bland, and Bland did okay. I think he's just a 6 though, but he had 5 interceptions. He's a 10. My third cornerback was not very good, so I think a 4. So I had to get a stronger third cornerback so that I could throw something up against 3 wide receiver sets.
Yeah, Bland got good ratings on Pro Football Focus. So
I have to admit, I had to look him up, but then once I looked him up, I was going, okay, I see.
No, he did good for Dallas, and he was he's a rookie backup. He didn't. Every time he hit the field, he made plays.
Yeah.
And we knew this, Dan. We knew that Len had watched his Cowboys, so he knew Bland.
I knew Bland. Yep.
Yeah. And at the time, Calvin, I went to Calvin. I was like, who the heck is that? And then I was like, but then after I started looking him up, I said, to be fair, I don't know if he would have lasted to Dallas's second round.
He would not. He would not have.
No, he would not. He was not on my first round, but I mean, once I looked at him, again, like a lot of interceptions. High rating from Pro Football Focus and a 6. I mean, not bad. A lot of interceptions,
Yeah, like I said, every time he hit the field, he was making plays. So I was impressed by his play all year last year whenever he played. So I took him. Hopefully he'll get even better and get more playing time.
Yeah.
But to change the subject, we're getting close to the playoffs
Yeah.
in the PAFL. So, and it looks like it's almost set as far as, especially in the AFC.
I think the AFC is well defined.
I mean, I don't necessarily. I mean, I assume that San Francisco's going. I don't know if they're going to be Kansas City. If they don't, did they?
did.
Okay. So I mean, there is one. Kansas City. I mean, San Francisco, in theory, could end up getting that last wild card spot.
But they have to win, and Vegas has to lose. Because the tiebreaker, they swept them. Las Vegas swept them.
Well, I mean, but I'm talking like for the number 6 seed, because San Fran beat Indy. Now I don't necessarily.
Yeah, but Indy's ahead. Indy's got 10 wins.
But if San Fran's got 9, so if Indy loses to Kansas City, which you wouldn't anticipate it, but then again,
Right.
Kansas City's had some has played tough this year, and then San Fran's got to play Detroit. Would they see? Yeah, that's going to be a tough game.
Yeah.
Because Detroit and New York are tied for that last wild card spot as well.
How many wild cards are there? 3 in each conference?
2. 6 teams make the playoffs.
So it's
2,
3.
3,
Yeah.
3.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, 3.
Yep.
Can't do
So
math.
in the NFC, it's going to be up to let's see, New York, Detroit. They're the other 2, because Dallas is gonna make the wild card.
Yeah,
Dallas and either
and
Arizona.
Arizona.
Or the Rams. So
I-
they got one more spot open.
I'll probably rest my guys this week against Arizona because I can't take any more injuries.
Well, I'm going to say you and I more than likely, Lynn. There's always an outside shot that I could win the division, but I'm not counting on it. But you and I most likely will play 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah. So we're both going to play scabs and not really put up our ideas or our game plans to the other, right? Pretty much.
I've got to rest some guys just so that way I don't take a chance on them getting injured for 2 games
Right.
going into the playoffs. So
Yeah, I'm going to play
the
blow up.
Rams lose. If the Rams lose, I'm sure Joe will change his tune. Then he could get the 3 seed.
And I'm going to play
Rams
slow down,
don't
burn the
necess-
clock.
I don't even know if there's any, because then what would happen is I would end up playing the Giants, and the Giants kicked my butt earlier this year, so I don't match up well with the Giants.
Yeah.
So not that I necessarily am going to match up well with Len, but
Well, Dallas has a machine on offense, but like Len's saying, he's beat up.
Yep,
And when
beat
he
up.
gets hurt, when he's beat up, it's a lot easier. When he's healthy, it's a lot harder.
When I'm healthy, they're a tough team to beat, but when I'm beat up, it don't take much to beat them up to the point to where it gets a lot easier too.
Yeah, and we didn't talk the AFC. It's going to be Cleveland and Buffalo round 3.
Yeah.
That's coming up first and next week in the first week of the playoffs. It's Buffalo and Cleveland again.
Yeah, so it's kind of, it's pretty much there who's going to be in the playoffs right now, isn't it?
Well, I had lost track that San Francisco could, in fact, tie Indy. I had forgot about that. I thought Indy was far enough ahead. But no, Indy still's got to win one more game. I don't know who they play. It should be favorable, though.
I believe they play in Kansas City. So
Okay, yeah, so we talked about that. So that's pretty favorable unless Chase goes off or Kansas City goes off.
I think we're going to have to do a PAFL show before the playoffs start, so we're going to have to do another one maybe next week.
Yes, we'll do another one next week.
Yeah.
This one was main. You just get the PSAFL going. And
Yep, and I think we
See
did
what
that. Everyone just get ready. Read those rule pages. Make sure that you're up on the new rules. They much more closely match the PAFL now than they used to. So we've got 1 minute left. Anything that we need to say on the way out?
if you don't like reading, just play this video.
There you go. Just play the video.
You play the video, stop it. We
Yeah.
tried to verbally explain everything. That was the whole point of the show, so you know what's coming.
There you go. All right, guys, we are within 30 seconds, so we will catch you probably next week with PAFL playoff show. So we will see you then. Bye-bye. Have a good week.
That's all, folks.